Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS. Paul here. In today's video, we're going to talk about vendors in Yu-Gi-Oh! What do we think of them? Are they good? Are they bad? How do we deal with them as players? So it's going to be a fun discussion. Let's hop right in. Vendors are players, mostly, who buy and sell Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards in bulk. A big suitcase or just several binders of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards all organized into rarities and types and sets and different things like that. The idea here is that, they'll have all of their supplies and go sometimes from shop to shop or from regional to regional, or they'll do it online, where they're just, buying cards low and selling cards sometimes high. So there are ups and downs to this. First thing, vendors let you get the cards that you want in person all at one time. So if you're looking for several different little nitpicking pieces of different decks and just I'm looking for this for my extra and these commons and this rare, you can kind of just get it all in one place from a vendor, and that's really good. Also, it's cool because for shops that don't necessarily have great card flow, if a vendor comes along or people from that shop, go to a regional, they can get a lot of cards in circulation through a vendor, and that's really great. And vendors can even offer good prices, especially through competition. What you might see at larger events like regionals and YCS are several vendors who have booths. So usually they're not single people, they're usually like companies like, maybe Troll and Toad comes to mind, where they'll have booths where they have the cards sort of laid out on the glass, right? If there are other booths selling, this card for $12 and the other place is selling it for $14, you'll always go to the place that's selling it for $12. So poof, that's a great thing about vendors too, is if they have to compete with each other, you can get lower prices. Yeah, and vendors, last but not least, are a great way to just make money. If you're in need of fast cash at a Yu-Gi-Oh! Event, then go to a vendor. You can make easy lunch money. So that's the good stuff. Now let's talk about the not as good parts. The first being that vendors admittedly rip people off. This is, in their defense, something that they have to do. Like I said earlier, it's about making a profit, so I can't buy a $5 card from you and then sell it for $5. Like, I don't make any money from that, so it's kind of pointless. I have to buy it from you for like $4 or $3 and then try to sell it for $5 or maybe $6, or maybe I can buy it from you for $2 and sell it for $4. It doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter is I do have to buy it from players at a much lower price than it's worth. And this is something that's kind of inherently known when you're interacting with a vendor. The thing is though, this can oftentimes end up exploiting people. People who are maybe desperate for money, and I know beggars can't be choosers, and I kind of agree, but people who aren't necessarily aware of prices can often get ripped off. And I've seen, people sell entire collections for like easily less than half of what they're worth. I've seen like entire collections that are worth maybe, let's say, $1,000 get sold for like $400. Another bad thing I would say is that vendors can drain card shops. I've seen, card shops that really don't get necessarily a lot of like card flow as it is. They might not be the most active scene, and then a vendor can come along from out of town and pull all the just good, valuable, recent, popular holos, and the shop's lost all of its cards and they don't have much to show for it in terms of money. And then the last thing is vendors kind of sap the fun and meaning out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it just becomes monetized. For a lot of these people, it is just a business. They don't particularly care for any of the cards that they're getting. They're just buying and selling them. They're getting these cards not because they want the cards, but because the cards will sell. If you're aware of Kazuki Takahashi, he's kind of a big part of the reason why Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not allowed to have cash prizes at tournaments. It's because he didn't believe in playing the game for money and it being about monetary exchange. Vendors kind of take the spirit and fun out of the game, for some people at least, by just turning into dollar signs, right? I found I don't enjoy selling cards to vendors. I've done it when I've needed money in desperate times. It's never been pleasant. I've never really felt like I was getting the money I wanted, and I always kind of felt like I was just another person in the line, right? Like it's usually a line of people waiting to get their collection or stuff appraised, right? And it's never really been a pleasant time, though I will say buying from them is almost always a pleasant experience. I love the instant gratification of just like, oh, I want an ultra rare upstart for my deck. A vendor's got it, he's selling it for $10, got it. Like I've got it, I don't have to wait, I don't have to fiddle around on the internet and all that stuff. I can just get it, and that's always been good. And usually vendors don't sell for obnoxious prices. They just buy for obnoxious prices. My advice would be like use vendors for what they're useful for, which is just getting the cards you want. But I think that if you're trying to get, your money's worth and sell stuff, it's just not really a great time. Although it can be a good way if you're trying to get out of the game like for good. You can sell just all your cards to a vendor at once and get a decent amount of money. I would say though, if you can at least kind of find a local vendor, somebody that like at my card shop, we've got a guy who lives just a few hours away and he tends to kind of stop by every now and again. And since people know him, he's not like as, sharky, I guess you could say, with these prices. And so that makes it a little bit more, the interactions are a bit more bearable. I've interviewed vendors, from the vendors I've interviewed, one video might be on this channel, but I've talked to several of them. They don't like the idea of ripping people off either. In fact, I've met vendors who are very upfront about the idea, like about the fact that like, I will buy your collection, but you won't be making the full amount of money off it. I can't do that. And like, do you sort of accept those conditions going into this exchange? And some people are okay with that. And I think that once that transparency has been established, right, then it's fine. Like if you know that you're not getting your price is worth, but you still choose to sell your cards to a vendor, then I guess it's okay. Like they're not doing any harm at that point if it's a mutually beneficial exchange. One other thing that this reminds me about too is that some vendors aren't players, and those are the ones that I tend to not like as much. The vendors who don't really care about Yu-Gi-Oh!, don't have any interest in it. I'm not saying you have to like play it competitively or super actively, but the vendors who really are just keeping up with card prices on whatever websites just for the sake of buying and selling the cards, that's a little bit grimy to me. Like I feel like you should at least care about the game and the community that you're playing in. Otherwise, it really does feel like cryptically corporate. But like if you're trying to make money off of Yu-Gi-Oh!, I do think that there's better places to do it. Like making money off a card game is really hard. You're not gonna make much. Most vendors I've talked to have said that they don't make a lot of money off of this, and it's not like, like they make profits, but it's not one of those things where like they can do it without a day job. You can't make a living off of this, you shouldn't expect to. The last thing is that I've actually been offered to help like a company vend at an event before. And the way that it was gonna work is I was just gonna have to sit at a desk. I refused, by the way. Not refused out of anger and spite, but just because I didn't want to sit behind a desk all day and like buy and sell cards from Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. And I would have to there was like a card price list that I would go by, and I really felt like that alone kind of just made it feel kind of boring and just too systematic for me, right? Like where it's just, this is what you buy these cards prices at, and like this is what you sell at, and it just felt like it would be kind of unfun. I like the interaction part of trading too much. I like the idea of like, sort of talking to the person that you're trading with and really sort of seeing what you want, what they want. So I guess in conclusion, if I had to offer like any advice for somebody with dealing with vendors, is be very aware that you're not going to get necessarily your money's worth. And if you go into it okay with that, then that's fine. This isn't a video that's like, attacking vendors. I know they are just normal people. But it's just something to keep in mind. If you want to be a vendor, I actually wouldn't recommend it. I don't think that there's enough money to be made, like I said, and it's difficult to get into. I know a lot of people try to get into it just to buy cards for cheap and sell them high, but it doesn't really work that way. Getting off the ground is tough and things like that, or so I've heard at least. How do you guys deal with vendors? What have your experiences with them been like? Are they like good or bad for the game? I think that much like how I was talking about spectators the other week and how, we've talked about things like judges and stuff like that in the past, they're a facet of this community, right? Like it's something that you're not going to go to a bigger event, a regional or YCS, without seeing vendors and maybe interacting with them. I don't think that they're bad. I think that they're an integral part. And I mean, like, it would suck if we didn't have any of them. Maybe practices could be a bit better, but I mean, what they're doing isn't illegal. So at the end of the day, it's just a part. Like, you can always ignore vendors, right? So it's not that bad. What do you guys think though? What have been your best and worst experiences with vendors? If you are a vendor and you're watching this video, what do you think about the sort of necessary evil of buying low and selling fairly high? What are your experiences like that? How's that been? So that's the video for today. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos, or else the vendor will rip you off too. I don't know. Alright, that's the video, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.